Hello, my name is Sean Sperry and I am with the IBM Storage Group. In today's video, we're going to cover the new features of Spectrum Protect Plus version 10.1.1. Now, my colleague Trisha Zhang will cover the new features of Spectrum Protect version 8.1.5, which are listed over on the left-hand side of this slide. And I will cover the new features of Spectrum Protect Plus version 10.1.1. This is a pretty large release for Spectrum Protect Plus, so there are quite a few slides and features to go over. So let's go ahead and get started. The first enhancement for version 10.1.1 is an enhancement for Spectrum Protect Plus to allow you to protect the Spectrum Protect Plus infrastructure. And what that really amounts to is being able to replicate VSnap storage for disaster recovery purposes and providing an automated catalog backup of the Spectrum Protect Plus infrastructure. So in version 10.1.1, Spectrum Protect Plus allows asynchronous replication between VSnap repositories of the backups of your Hyper-V or VMware infrastructure. So you can do this to have a built-in automatic off-site disaster recovery copy. The configuration for this, as you'll see in the slides coming up, is really easy. Basically, you set up a partnership between the VSnap storage, and then you set up the times that you're going to do the replication in the SLAs that are doing the backup, and the replication occurs on an automatic schedule. Now, of course, for disaster recovery purposes, you're also going to need to protect the Spectrum Protect Plus database. And so in version 10.1.1, you can protect the Spectrum Protect Plus catalog information with a backup to VSnap storage. And basically, again, this is very easy to set up and very easy to use. You just add this backup to the SLA or create a new SLA policy, and then on the schedule, it will automatically back up the catalog. So just some detailed steps on adding the VSnap replication. Uh, you add the VSnap server, so you create a VSnap server, and then you click on the configure tools icon for that server, click on the plus, and you define a VSnap partner from the configure storage partners menu. And that will create a partner for a particular VSnap storage repository. Now, just a quick note here, you can have multiple partnerships, so you can replicate a VSnap repository to multiple other VSnap sites. But in this demo, we just have, or just screenshot, we only have one partnership. And really, that's pretty much how simple it is to set up replication. Now, in order to schedule the replication, you go to your SLA's policy, you click on backup storage replication, and you enable backup storage replication. And you give it a frequency and a time for the replication to run, and the target site for the replication partner. And now you have VSnap backing up to a replication partner. Now, just a quick note, as you can see down at the bottom, you can have same or different replication policies. So by default, if that bottom checkbox is checked, you're going to have the same retention policy on the target as you do on the source. If, on the other hand, you want a different retention policy on the target, you can uncheck that and set the retention policy that you want on the target. Catalog backup, again, very easy to do. You go to System Catalog Backup, and you click the SLAs that you want the catalog backup to be a part of, and then you basically click Save, And really that is all there is to it to do a catalog backup or catalog protection. Now, from a disaster recovery perspective, if you lose your primary VSnap appliance, you may have to do a catalog restore. And in that case, you will install the new Spectrum Protect Plus appliance and then scan in the VSnap that contains the catalog backup. And then you click System, Catalog, and Restore, and then click the VSnap repository containing the catalog backup. When you do that, you'll see a list of the catalog backups that are in the repository, and basically you just choose Restore from the checkbox on the right-hand side. So very easy to use, very easy to do. Now, just to note that the backup is a true backup and not a merge. So when you restore this catalog backup, you will be overwriting any existing configuration or catalog in the current Spectrum Protect Plus instance that you're logged into. In version 10.1.1, we've introduced a new concept of sites. This really allows you to more easily visualize the different locations of your Spectrum Protect Plus infrastructure. So it gives you the ability to see where backups are stored and to restore from the one that's closest to you, and to be able to replicate to sites that are very easily visualized as a different location. It's really pretty easy to set up the sites. You just go to System, Site, you click the plus button, and you type in a new site name, and you click Save. And then you have a new site where you can define VSnaps or VADP data movers, etc. So moving on to VADP proxies, as you probably know from version 10.1.0, Spectrum Protect Plus allows you to use VADP proxies to enable load sharing and load balancing of backup jobs. And what those do is allow the processing load to be shifted off of the Spectrum Protect Plus appliance and onto those proxies that you create. Well, in previous versions of the product, or in version 10.1, you had to manually install those proxies. And a new enhancement in version 10.1.1 allows you to automatically install the VADP proxy components onto an existing server. There's a list of requirements at the bottom. I won't read them all to you, but basically you're going to stand up a SUSE Linux Enterprise server or a Red Hat server and give it the required RAM. And then once you do that, you'll be able to do and of course meet the other requirements for ports opened and things along those lines. And then you'll be able to do a push installation of the proxy software. You just log into the SPP portal and choose System VADP Proxy. You'll fill in the hostname IP, username, and credentials and click Install. And Spectrum Protect Plus will install all the VADP proxy software on the new virtual machine or physical machine that you set up to be used as a VADP proxy. In addition to doing the initial installation of the VADP proxy, we will also allow you to update proxies. So as we continue to push out new versions of Spectrum Protect Plus, you'll be able to go out and update the proxy version. What you have to do is stop processing on the proxy by doing a suspend on the proxy. And then you will go in there and basically look at the version column to see the current version of the VADP proxy. And if there's a different updated version available, you'll see the update icon next to the status column. And you will click the update icon. You'll fill in the credentials for root to access the VADP proxy, and you'll click update to update the software. Now, of course, having multiple proxies, you'll want to be able to use them and specify which ones you use for your data protection jobs. So in version 10.1.1, now that you have multiple proxy servers, you can specify which proxy to use for a backup job at the job level. And you go to Hypervisor VMware Backup, select the resources that you want included in the backup job, which would be VMs, data stores, however way you want to select the virtual machines that are going to be included in this backup job. And then click the Select Options button. And here you can specify a VADP proxy either by site, so by picking a whole site for the proxy, or by picking a specific proxy in your environment. Obviously, you're going to want to pick ones that are closest and connected by the fastest network to the VMs that you are including in the backup job. Okay, so the next new feature that we're going to get into is application protection for Spectrum Protect Plus version 10.1.1. In version 10.1.0, we did not support any applications in Spectrum Protect Plus. And beginning at version 10.1.1, we are going to start supporting the backup of Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle. So we're going to start off with a review of SQL Server, and what you'll find is as we get into Oracle, the process is very much the same, except it's Oracle as opposed to SQL Server. So first of all, the Spectrum Protect Plus supported versions. As of this recording, it's SQL Server 28 2012 on Windows Server 2012 R2, SQL 2012, 2014, and 2016 on Windows Server 2016. Again, these support matrices change on such a frequent basis that before you install, and if you're looking for support for a specific version of SQL Server, go out and look at the supported version list and make sure you have the latest information. And we do support both SQL Server on both physical and virtual machines. Now, there are some prerequisites and security that you'll have to set up. Windows Remote Shell must be enabled. The iSCSI initiator service must be started. The user that you're logging in must have logon as a service rights on the SQL Server system. Inside SQL Server, the login credential must have public and sysadmin permission enabled and permission to access cluster resources in an always-on environment. To perform log backups on SQL Server, the SQL Server agent service must be a local Windows administrator and must have sysadmin permissions enabled to manage SQL Server agent jobs. And finally, the host name has to be resolvable for the SQL Server systems. Once you meet those prerequisites and set up the proper permissions, it's pretty easy to go in there and register the SQL Server servers and clusters. As you can see in version 10.1 on the left-hand side, we have a new portal entry called Application Backup, and you can choose SQL and Oracle. So for SQL Server, you choose Application SQL Backup, Manage Application Server, and then click the plus, and you'd enter a DNS name or an IP address and the user ID or password uh, of the credentials that you're going to use to access the SQL server and click Save. Now, in version 10.1.1, we've added a new feature for both SQL, Oracle, and file system backups that allows you to test registered servers to make sure that you have the proper permissions. So when you have a SQL server set up, Oracle, or just a virtual machine, and you want to test and make sure that all the connectivity is working and all the security is working, you can click on that test button in the actions menu or that test selection in the actions menu, and it will go out there and run a sequence of tests to make sure that all the connectivity is working with that virtual machine or that instance. So it's a very good thing to do to make sure that you can connect uh, before the actual job is run, and you can solve any problems that may come up with security or connectivity issues. SQL Server, from an inventory perspective, kind of works just like virtual machines from a hypervisor perspective. What's going to happen is, as you register SQL servers, you're going to get an inventory job, which is called Default Application Server Inventory Job. And that job will run on a nightly basis to go out there and discover all of these SQL Server instances or SQL Server databases on each server and cluster that you have registered. Now you can also, just like you can on a hypervisor, run this job on demand. So you just go to the job manager and click Action Start, and the inventory job will go out there and uh, and inventory the databases and instances. Now, as you already know from backing up virtual machines, Spectrum Protect Plus is an agentless application, but it does need to install some services that are used to manage the backups on either the VM on the VM or for SQL Server or for Oracle. So here you can see a screenshot of the agents that it installs, and these are installed during the inventory process or updated during the inventory process. So as you can see, you have a Spectrum Protect Plus agent, Spectrum Protect Plus agent script, and Spectrum Protect Plus agent for SQL. So now the details of how SQL Server is backed up. Spectrum Protect Plus performs backups of SQL databases at the block level, and it's going to do an incremental forever backup of those SQL Server databases. So the first backup is going to be a full, and all the allocated blocks from the source database are transferred to the VSnap repository. Then after that first full, all the subsequent backups are going to be block level incrementals and transfer only the changed blocks. So what it does, the way it achieves this, is it queries the Windows Update sequence number or USN change journal to locate and back up the changed block. So it's almost the same technology, or probably is the same technology, to be honest with you, that's used with AAG log shipping. Each backup is going to keep track of the last USN ID, which is used by the next backup to query for change blocks. And of course, the backups are going to be SQL Server application consistent. Once it gets the blocks that it needs to back up, the backup of the SQL data is going to be done by creating an iSCSI mount from the VSnap volume to the SQL Server. And then a subfolder is going to be created for each database on the target volume. You can turn on and off log backup, and if you choose to turn on log backup, it's done by creating a CIFS volume on the VSnap server and mounting it to the SQL Server. The logs are copied to SQL Server transaction files, and each log backup generates one transaction file containing all the transactions from the last backup to the current time. And of course, we're going to go in and truncate the logs after the backup. From a GUI perspective, it's really very easy to set up. You create an appropriate SLA policy under SQL Backup, under Application SQL Backup, and you can either select individual databases or select the entire instance. So it pretty much works just like virtual machines, except now you're dealing with SQL Server databases and SQL Server instances. If a database is not supported, it won't be selectable. And you can also see that if your database is in full or bulk recovery mode, you'll also be able to back up the logs. You'll see an eligible for log backup is yes. Obviously, if it's in simple mode, then it will not show that there. And then next you apply the desired SLA and options. So that's backup. Now let's take a look at the process for doing a restore. And this again is very similar to virtual machines. You can restore databases in two modes, either test or production, and we're going to go over what each one of those means in an upcoming slide. You can of course pick the original location or an alternate location for restoring the database. You can pick the original name or a new name. Databases can be restored from the primary or replicated copy if that is configured. And then you can either have Spectrum Protect run recovery or just restore the database in no recovery mode and go into SQL Server and run recovery on the database. For those of you who've used SQL Server, you'll know you'll see the database in what's called the restoring state on the GUI, and then you can go in and recover it there, or you can recover it using transact SQL commands. Point-in-time recovery is supported for both test and production mode if you're doing log backups. So now the difference between test and production mode restores, and again, this very much mimics what goes on with virtual machines. For a test mode restore, the VSnap volume containing the database backup is cloned, and the clone volume is iSCSI mounted on the SQL Server. The database is brought up from the clone volume. As per usual, the database is always restored to standalone local instance, even if it's restored to an always-on availability group. And it doesn't join an always-on availability group. That's pretty standard for SQL Server. And then you can manually add the database to the primary instance if necessary, and then use SQL seeding script to add the secondary databases to the AAG. Now, the primary difference for test mode is you'll note here that the database is not copied to the SQL Server machine. So a test mode restore is going to be very fast because there's no data movement involved and the database stays on VSnap. With a production mode restore, however, the VSnap volume containing the database backup is going to be cloned. The cloned volume is iSCSI mounted to the SQL Server, and then the database log files are going to be copied from the mounted volume to the SQL Server virtual machine or physical machine. Again, the database will be brought up. If it's restored to an always-on availability group, only the primary database is going to be added, so you're going to go out there and reseed the other members of the AAG. Secondary databases will be restored to the local instance in no recovery mode, which requires a log restore. There is a third option for doing SQL Server databases restored, and that is the so-called instant option access restore. And what this really does is provide access to the database and log files. So the VSnap volume is going to be cloned and mounted on the SQL Server. You can see the clone in disk management, and then you can go into SQL Server and attach to those backup files and run the database. Okay, so that was SQL Server, and what you're going to see is Oracle is in many ways very similar to SQL Server. Again, here we have a list of the Oracle databases that are supported, including 11G, 12CR1, and 12CR2, and the operating systems versions that are supported. But again, same recommendation with Oracle as with SQL Server. Look at the supported list and make sure your specific version is an operating system is on it before you start trying to back up. Same sort of information with prerequisites and permissions. The Oracle database must be mounted and open and must be in archive log mode to be protected with Spectrum Protect Plus. Of course, DNS name must be resolvable. You have to have Python version 2.6x or 2.7x, and SSH must be enabled. Now there are a couple of additional permissions here. The user agent must belong to the Oracle inventory group, and the user agent must have the following sudo privileges, which are required to discover storage layouts, mount and unmount the disks, and manage the databases. So I'll let you read the commands at the bottom of or read the permissions at the bottom of the screen there, but those permissions are required in order to back up Oracle databases with SPP. Registering Oracle systems once you set up the permissions is very similar to SQL Server. You navigate to Application Oracle and Backup. You manage application servers and click the plus sign, and then add the host name or DNS name and the user ID with the proper privileges. Same test procedure, right? If you're concerned that the permissions are not right, run the test, make sure that everything, or even if you're not concerned that the permissions are not right, run the test to make sure that everything is in order before you start trying to perform a Oracle database backup. Just like with SQL Server and with virtual machines, there's a default application server inventory job. It's scheduled to run daily by default to pick up all the Oracle databases. You can run it at any time to pick up new Oracle databases if you don't want to wait for the daily run. So get the details of Oracle database backups and how it works in the background. Again, same concept. Oracle backups are going to be run on a backup once, incremental forever scheme. And Oracle block change tracking is required. If it's not present on the Oracle database, it will be enabled automatically on the first backup. The first Oracle backup will be a full, and Spectrum Protect Plus will create a new VSnap volume and mount it to the Oracle server using NFS. If the Oracle server has NFS disabled, the SPP appliance will automatically enable it. And then a level 0 image copy of the database will be created using RMAN. Subsequent backups are incremental. So the previous created volume will be reused and mounted using NFS. And then Spectrum Protect Plus will do a level 1 incremental backup using RMAN. and immediately apply it on top of the previous image copy to bring it up to date. The database is not placed in hot backup mode. So this is something that is important to understand. Archive logs generated only during the data backup operation are backed up at the end of the operation. So we only take the minimum set of logs required to have a consistent database backup during the backup operation. Logs generated before the backup began are not included, so currently in version 10.1.1, point-in-time restore is not going to be supported with Oracle databases. We will also back up the control file in binary form, the control file trace in text form, and the database parameters in text form, or the P file of the database. You can view these databases, or the DBA can look in the RMAN catalog, in the local RMAN catalog, and can see these backups. And also a note for DBAs that syncing of this information to a remote recovery catalog is not performed automatically. If you're using Oracle RAC or in a RAC configuration, the backup is performed from any one node in the cluster where the DB is up and running. Creating the database backup from the GUI perspective is, again, really simple. You navigate to Applications, Oracle Backup. You select the Oracle instance or the individual databases, and you select and apply an SLA. And again, remember that if your database is not in archive log format, which most Oracle databases in production are, but just an understanding, particularly if you're testing, if your database is not in archive log format, it's not going to show up in the list on Spectrum Protect Plus. The restores for Oracle databases are very similar to SQL Server. There are two database restore types, test and production, and we're going to go over what each one of those mean. Basically, test leaves the database on the VSnap server, production copies the database back. They can be restored to original or alternate Oracle home and original or alternate directory paths for production. And you can rename an Oracle database if you choose to. Spectrum Protect Plus will create clone volumes from the selected snapshot and mount it to the Oracle server using NFS. And if you're using RAC, it's going to be mounted to all modes. An Oracle Direct NFS is required. If it's not already configured, it will be enabled automatically by the restore job. So some details on the two modes of restoration. First, Oracle Database Restore in test mode. In test mode, a new database instance is going to be created using an original or alternate name specified by the user. A new control file is going to be created to point to the data file image copies under the NSF share, and media recovery is performed to make the database consistent using the archive log backup that you have on the NFS share. And then once you do that, the database is going to be opened in read-write mode. After a successful restore, the job will go into a resource active mode on Spectrum Protect Plus. And then finally, when you cancel it, the test mode database will be shut down and the NSF share will be unmounted. So you can use it until that point. The restored databases will run in no archive log mode. And in the case of RAC, the database is going to be opened on the first node only, and operation will be skipped on other nodes. For production, the steps are going to be a little bit different. A new database instance is going to be created using the original or alternate name. If you're restoring with the same name and same directory paths, the control file is going to be restored and the data files are restored from the backup using RMAN. If you're restoring with a new name or new directory paths, a new control file is going to be created containing the new DB and new paths. The new paths will point to file system directories, and which are created if they don't already exist. If the new paths point to automatic storage management, the specified disk groups must automatically exist if you are using ASM, and the data files are restored from the backup to the specified new paths. Media recovery is performed to make the database consistent using the archived log backups that are present on the NFS share, and then the database is going to be opened in read-write mode. Again, this is production, so when the restore is complete, the NF share is going to be unmounted and there's going to be no resource active in Spectrum Protect Plus. If you are using rack, the main restore steps are performed only on the first node, and all other nodes, the instance is started and the database is opened in read-write mode. Okay, and finally, just like in SQL Server, there is a third option for Oracle, the Instant Access Restore. And this option just gives you access to the backup files. So after mounting the clone volume, the job from Spectrum Protect Plus perspective is going to go into a resource active state, and the DBA can manually browse the contents of that NFS share and use whatever RMAN commands he wants on those backups to get to the database files. When canceling, as per usual, the volume, the instant restore in Spectrum Protect Plus, the share is going to be unmounted and the job is going to end. Creating an Oracle database restore in Spectrum Protect Plus, again, is very simple. You navigate to Application Oracle Restore. You're going to pick your database and you're going to pick the recovery point and just move it over to the right-hand side. You can choose the destination, original, or alternate location, a new name, or test or production. And we do include the ability to run some pre and post scripts with the restore, so you can do whatever you need to do, for instance, data masking, etc. Okay, so that's Oracle. Now let's go back to some additional support for VMware and additional support that was added to Spectrum Protect Plus at version 10.1. We always allowed you to pick virtual machines from a VMs in a folder level, and now we support VMware tagging for picking the virtual machines that are going to be in any particular SLA. You can now use tags as a filter. You go in and apply the tags in vSphere, and then they're automatically picked up by the Spectrum Protect Plus inventory. You can view those in the backup job selection pane by using the tags and categories filter when creating the job definition. So that is how you pick those particular virtual machines for backup. We will restore the VMware tags when you restore a virtual machine if you check that option. And as you can see, that is down there at the bottom on Restore VM Tags. So that just puts the tags back in VMware when you restore the VM. We now support exclusion of VM decays from VMware. And the way you do it is you assign a VM to an SLA policy. And once you do that, the VM will become a clickable link, and you can go out there and select which VM decays you would like to include or exclude from the backup during the backup job. Now, just a little note on including and excluding VMs. VMDK inclusion and exclusion can only be performed when looking at the VMs and templates view. Looking at the data store view, for example, will not allow you to click on the clickable link and select the disks from backup. So make sure that you're in the VMs and templates view when you're selecting those. Another way to exclude certain virtual machines from a backup job is to use exclusion rules. So for instance, you might want to exclude all of the machines that have test-dev in its name when you set up a backup job, and you can do that by just setting up the SLA to exclude virtual machines with a specific name. You use wildcards, you type it in the configuration options of the SLA and then save it when you save the job, and those machines will be automatically excluded. We've added the ability to expire backups from the Spectrum Protect Plus console. The way you do it is you just go to System Catalog Retention, and you'll be able to type in a search pattern and enter some filter details to find the specific backup job name that you are looking for. And then once you do it, you can choose Action Expire to pick to expire the job on the next maintenance job. So what this allows you to do is expire VSnap backups outside of the normal SLA pattern for whatever reasons you may have. Okay, so next let's move on to some additional enhancements in version 10.1.1 to the RBAC, or role-based access control. At version 10.1.1, we do provide additional granularity for organizations to provide very granular access control to the resources of Spectrum Protect Plus, so that administrators, DBAs, etc. can go in and only have access to the resources who they should from a security perspective. There are really three components to RBAC: the users, the who, which defines which users will follow or have access to a role and resources. And then once you pick the user, you can give them a role. So what are the allowed tasks that a user can perform? And the resources are which areas and resources the user can access. So those are the three components of RBAC. We have predefined some built-in roles for you, including application admin, backup only, restore only, sysadmin, self-service, and VM admin. So these are a good start in terms of the roles that are available in the system that should allow you to define users' role with a level of access that they need. If, however, you want to add some additional roles or customize any of those, you can do that. We've also created two resource groups out of the box, including the database all resources and the hypervisor all resources. And here again, this is kind of a typical separation of duties, right? The VMware administrators are typically separate from the DBAs. So you can use those resource groups, or if you want to have more granularity, you can go ahead and create some custom resource groups for your particular users that limit that that further apply more granularity to it. Beginning in version 10.1.1, well, Spectrum Protect has always used a REST API to handle communications between the back end of the product and the graphical user interface, the Spectrum Protect Plus portal. But in version 10.1.1, we have exposed that API so that customers and users can access it and programmatically control Spectrum Protect Plus. And we provided additional documentation for all of the REST API's calls. Now, this is just a standard REST API, so if you've done any kind of REST API programming before, the REST API from Spectrum Protect Plus is really no different. It's just documented and available now. The server is going to respond in JSON format, and then you'll be able to parse that in whatever scripting language you choose to use to programmatically control the product. The documentation is available from the application itself, and it's broken into two parts. There's a REST API guide and a VSnap API guide. So you'll see the documentation broken into those two particular areas. And the doc will include all of the endpoints or URLs and the JSON format that you can expect to receive from all the gets, the puts, the posts, and the deletes. Now, we're not going to really go into any programming here, but you can, of course, this is just a standard REST API call, and you can use any programming language that you really know and like to access Spectrum Protect Plus. Includes Python, JavaScript, PowerShell, Groovy, etc. Some of those I've never used before, like for instance Groovy. I've done some work with the REST API in PowerShell, and I tend to like that. I know a lot of people use Python and JavaScript. So just whatever scripting language you want, you can now control Spectrum Protect Plus with. And then finally, in addition to an on-site, on-premises deployment of Spectrum Protect Plus, we have now added a offering of Spectrum Protect Plus on the IBM cloud. So if you're running your VMware environment on the IBM cloud and want to use Spectrum Protect Plus to protect it, you can do that. So it provides automatic deployment and configuration of Spectrum Protect Plus with no on-premises resources required. This will be available on the 19th of March 2018 on the IBM Cloud for VMware Solutions portal. Now, in terms of licensing Spectrum Protect Cloud, you can do it in two ways. If you have your own license, you can bring it with you and use it on the IBM Cloud from Passport Advantage, or you can also license Spectrum Protect Plus on the VMware Solutions portal. Once you do the deployment of Spectrum Protect Plus, however, you will be responsible in this solution for managing it, upgrading it, etc. So it's just a deploy of the appliance. This is some information about the technical specs that you will get with Spectrum Protect Plus. It's deployed as a pre-sized virtual machine with those specifications on the right-hand side. I won't read them to you. You can read them yourself. But you can configure as much VSnap repository as you want using the IBM Cloud Endurance file storage volume. So here you see an example of, in this particular deployment, we have two storage volumes with 2,000 gig each for VSnap storage. You can increase that or decrease that depending on your needs. In addition, if you deploy Spectrum Protect Plus and need to add storage to it, you can just go out there and in the cloud add additional VSnap storage to the deployment. And I won't read the instructions to you. It is documented on the IBM Cloud Solution Architecture Guide. Now, just a warning for this particular time. At the time of this recording, when you deploy Spectrum Protect Plus using this service in the IBM Cloud, you are going to get version 10.1.0, patch 1, and you will have to go out there and upgrade it to 10.1.1 to get the functionality that we discussed in this video. We expect to have that upgraded relatively soon, but as of this recording, uh, it is at version 10.1.0. So that's it for 10.1.1. It's quite a lot of functionality. I urge you to go out there and try it, and I would love to have some feedback from you in the comment section of this video.